Sunday family dinner at our home should have been peaceful. We were sharing apple pie when my sister-in-law Amanda suddenly pushed back her chair and stood up. The dining room fell silent as she pointed her finger directly at me with venom in her eyes. "You're a cheater," she announced loud enough for everyone to hear. Then she turned toward my 7-year-old daughter Sophia, who was innocently eating her dessert. "You're not really ours. Robert isn't your dad." Sophia's fork clattered to her plate as confusion washed over her sweet face. Instead of panicking or defending me immediately, my husband Robert calmly reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope. He placed it on the table with the slightest smile. My heart hammered against my ribs as Amanda's words echoed through our dining room. The familiar warmth of our home suddenly felt cold and hostile. How could she say something so cruel to an innocent child? Sophia's green eyes filled with tears as she looked between Amanda and me, trying to understand why her aunt was being so mean. I forced myself to stay calm, even though my mind raced back to 5 years ago when I first met Robert at a corporate retreat in Colorado. We had connected instantly over late-night conversations about our dreams and fears. Our love story had been beautiful and genuine, leading to our marriage 3 years later, and Sophia's arrival 18 months after that. Nothing about our relationship had ever been deceptive or dishonest. Amanda wasn't finished with her devastating announcement. She reached into her oversized purse and pulled out a thick manila folder, her hands shaking with what looked like excitement rather than nervousness. "I've been investigating you for months. Heather," she declared, spreading papers across our dinner table like some twisted detective revealing evidence. "I hired a private investigator because I noticed your suspicious behavior." Robert's brother, Jake, Amanda's husband of 6 years, reached for her arm. "Amanda, please stop this madness. You're scaring Sophia and embarrassing our family." His voice carried a desperate edge that made me realize this wasn't the first time he'd tried to rein in his wife's erratic behavior. But Amanda shrugged him off, her eyes blazing with determination. "I'm protecting this family from her lies," she spat, pulling out printed photographs and spreading them like cards. "Look at these pictures. Heather meeting secretly with another man. Mysterious phone calls at all hours. Unexplained absences when she claimed to be working late." The other family members around our table sat frozen in shocked silence. Robert's parents, Frank and Diane, had been enjoying their apple pie just moments before. Now Frank's weathered face showed confusion and concern, while Diane instinctively moved closer to comfort Sophia, who had started crying softly. My best friend Lucy, who had joined us for dinner after returning from a business trip, stared at Amanda with pure disbelief. I looked at the photographs Amanda was waving around and felt my stomach drop. There, I was captured in several images sitting across from a middle-aged Hispanic man in what appeared to be intimate conversation. But Amanda had completely twisted the context. The man in the photos was Dr. Martinez, my grief counselor, and these pictures had been taken during my therapy sessions at his office. "These meetings happened every Tuesday for 6 months, Amanda continued triumphantly. "Always at the same location, always lasting exactly 1 hour. What kind of business meeting follows such a precise pattern?" She pulled out printed emails and phone records. "And look at this correspondence. Emotional language, personal references. This isn't professional communication." My throat tightened as I realized the depths of Amanda's invasion of my privacy. She had somehow accessed my therapy records, my medical information, and my most vulnerable moments of grief processing. The emails she was quoting were between me and Dr. Martinez's office scheduling appointments and discussing payment for grief counseling after my father's sudden death in a car accident 8 months ago. "I saved this family," Amanda announced proudly, looking around the table for approval that clearly wasn't coming. I exposed the truth before she could destroy Robert and abandon that poor child. She gestured toward Sophia, who was now sobbing into Diane's shoulder. Robert remained unnaturally calm throughout Amanda's entire performance. He sat back in his chair, still holding that mysterious envelope, watching his sister-in-law systematically destroy her own reputation and relationships. His dark eyes showed no panic, no anger, no surprise. Just patient observation, as if he was waiting for Amanda to finish digging her own grave. Frank finally found his voice, his tone stern and authoritative. Amanda, you need to explain yourself right now. What gives you the right to spy on Heather or anyone else in this family? This behavior is completely unacceptable. Amanda's confidence never wavered. Someone had to do it. Robert was blind to her deception because he loved her too much to see the truth. I was protecting my brother-in-law and my niece from a woman who was obviously living a double life. She turned to glare at me directly. How long did you think you could fool everyone, Heather? How long before your secret affair destroyed this family? Lucy stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Amanda, you've lost your mind completely. Heather has been going to grief counseling since her father died. Dr. Martinez is a licensed therapist who helped her process the trauma of losing her dad so suddenly. Those weren't secret affairs. They were medical appointments. But Amanda laughed bitterly, shaking her head, as if Lucy was naive. That's exactly what she told you, because she needed an alibi. Grief counseling for 6 months. Please. Most people recover from loss much faster than that. She was using her father's death as cover for an ongoing relationship with another man. The cruelty of Amanda's words hit me like a physical blow. She was mocking my father's death and my legitimate need for professional help processing grief. Dad had been rushing to see Sophia's first school play when a drunk driver ran a red light and killed him instantly. The guilt I felt about his final moments, combined with the overwhelming loss, had nearly destroyed my ability to function as a mother and wife. Dr. Martinez had literally saved my sanity during those dark months. Robert finally spoke, his voice quiet, but carrying absolute authority. Are you finished destroying yourself, Amanda? He placed his hand on the envelope and looked directly at her. Because once you are, I have something to show everyone. Amanda's face flushed red with anger at Robert's calm challenge. Instead of backing down, she seemed to take his question as permission to reveal even more devastating information. What happened next shocked everyone at the table, including her own husband. You want to know why I investigated her? Amanda's voice rose to almost a shriek. Because I couldn't stand watching you waste your life on someone who doesn't deserve you, Robert. I've been in love with you since college, and I married Jake just to stay close to you, hoping you'd eventually realize we belonged together. The silence that followed was deafening. Jake's face went completely white as he processed what his wife had just confessed. 6 years of marriage, 2 children together, and she had been using him as a convenient way to remain near his brother. The betrayal was written clearly across his features as his entire world crumbled. Amanda, what are you saying? Jake whispered, his voice barely audible. But Amanda was beyond caring about the consequences now. Years of suppressed jealousy and obsession poured out like poison. I'm saying I never loved you, Jake. I loved Robert first. I met him at that fraternity party 8 years ago, and we spent the whole night talking about philosophy and literature. I thought we had a connection, but then he started dating that blonde girl from his economics class. I watched in horror as Amanda confessed to manipulating her way into Jake's life purely as a strategy to stay close to Robert. She had researched Jake's interests, engineered casual meetings, and pursued him relentlessly while keeping Robert as her true target. I married you because you were Robert's brother. She continued, oblivious to the devastation she was causing. I thought if I became part of the family, if I was the perfect sister-in-law, Robert would eventually see what he was missing. Then he met you. She turned to glare at me with pure hatred. You ruined everything, Heather. You stole the life I was supposed to have. Frank and Diane exchanged horrified glances as they realized they had welcomed a manipulative predator into their family. Diane's protective arms tightened around Sophia, who was watching the adult conflict with wide, frightened eyes. Amanda's confession continued to spiral as she revealed the extent of her campaign against me. I planted doubts about Heather in Robert's mind whenever I could. During her business trips, I'd casually mention how easy it would be for someone to cheat when they traveled so much. I pointed out that Sophia doesn't look exactly like Robert, suggesting maybe he should question her paternity. My hands clenched into fists as I realized how systematically Amanda had been trying to poison my marriage. She had used family gatherings, holiday celebrations, and casual conversations to plant seeds of distrust and suspicion. I scheduled family events specifically when Heather was at her grief counseling appointments, Amanda admitted proudly. I wanted Robert to notice how often she was absent from family functions. I made sure he knew she was choosing some mysterious appointment over spending time with us. Lucy stood up again, her face flushed with anger. Amanda, you're sick. You approached me multiple times asking about Heather's personal life, her work schedule, her friendships. I thought you were just being a caring sister-in-law, but you were gathering information to use against her. The manipulation went even deeper than I had imagined. Amanda had been tracking my movements, my appointments, my emotional state during the most vulnerable period of my life. While I was struggling to process my father's death and maintain my responsibilities as a mother and wife, she was documenting my every step to use as ammunition. You have no idea how hard it was to watch Robert choose you over and over again, Amanda said, her voice taking on an almost deranged quality. Even when I showed him evidence of your suspicious behavior, he defended you. Even when I suggested you might not be trustworthy, he stood by you. I couldn't understand why he couldn't see what was right in front of him. Jake suddenly pushed back from the table, his chair falling backward with a crash. 6 years, Amanda. 6 years of our marriage, 2 children, and you were pretending the entire time. You used me. You used our kids. You made us all part of your sick obsession with my brother. Sophia couldn't take any more of the shouting and ran toward the staircase, her little feet pounding on the hardwood floors. Diane immediately followed her, calling softly that everything would be okay. But how do you explain to a 7-year-old that her aunt has been planning to destroy her family for years? Amanda became increasingly frantic as she realized her confessions were backfiring. Instead of gaining sympathy or support, she was alienating everyone in the room. You don't understand, she pleaded, looking around desperately. I was trying to save Robert from making a terrible mistake. I could see Heather wasn't right for him. I knew she was hiding something. A woman doesn't need 6 months of therapy unless she's emotionally unstable or covering up guilty secrets. The cruelty of her words about my mental health struggle sent a surge of rage through my entire body. Amanda had taken my legitimate need for professional help after a traumatic loss and twisted it into evidence of moral failure. Frank's voice carried absolute authority when he spoke. Amanda, you will leave our house immediately. This behavior is beyond unacceptable. You have violated our trust, invaded Heather's privacy, manipulated our family relationships, and traumatized an innocent child. But Amanda wasn't finished. Her desperation made her even more dangerous as she realized her years of planning were crumbling. Robert, please! She turned to him with tears streaming down her face. You have to see what I've been trying to tell you. Heather has been lying to you about everything. The grief counseling story is fake. Those were romantic meetings with another man. Sophia probably isn't even your biological daughter. Robert finally responded, his voice carrying a tone I had never heard before. Cold, controlled, and absolutely final. Are you finished destroying yourself, Amanda? Robert's calm question seemed to flip a switch in the atmosphere. He had been sitting quietly observing Amanda's self-destruction with the patience of someone who knew exactly what was coming next. Now he opened the manila envelope he had been holding since Amanda's first accusation. I've been expecting this moment for 3 months, Robert said, pulling out a stack of photographs and documents. You see, Amanda, I knew about your investigation because I hired my own security specialist to investigate you. The color drained from Amanda's face as Robert spread his evidence across the table. There were clear photographs of Amanda meeting with a seedy-looking man at various coffee shops around town. Timestamps showed these meetings had been happening twice a week for months. Meet your private investigator, Robert said, pointing to the photos. Harold Winters, formerly a legitimate private detective until he lost his license 3 years ago for unethical practices. He's been very cooperative with my security team, especially when he realized the legal trouble he was facing. Amanda's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. She had been so focused on her investigation of me that she never considered Robert might be monitoring her activities. Robert continued methodically like a prosecutor presenting a case. These are phone recordings of your conversations with Mr. Winters, where you explicitly stated your intention to destroy my marriage and remove Heather from our family. He pressed play on a small digital recorder, and Amanda's voice filled the room. I don't care what it costs, Harold. I need evidence that proves Heather is cheating on Robert. If you can't find real evidence, then we'll have to create some. I'll pay extra for whatever it takes to break them up. Jake's face went ashen as he heard his wife's voice planning another family's destruction. Amanda had used their joint savings account to fund this obsession without his knowledge or consent. Here's documentation showing Amanda accessed Heather's medical records illegally. Robert continued pulling out official-looking papers. She used her friend Sarah, who works at Dr. Martinez's office, to obtain confidential therapy session notes. Sarah has already been fired and faces criminal charges for violating patient privacy laws. My stomach churned as I realized how deeply Amanda had invaded my most private moments. Those therapy sessions with Dr. Martinez had covered the most painful aspects of my father's death, my guilt about his accident, and my fears about failing as a mother while grieving. Amanda also attempted to bribe Dr. Martinez's secretary, offering her $500 for copies of Heather's session recordings, Robert said. The secretary immediately reported this to Dr. Martinez, who contacted me because he was concerned about Heather's safety. Frank leaned forward, his face grave with concern. Robert, are you telling us Amanda has been committing crimes against Heather? Multiple crimes, Robert confirmed. Bank records show she paid Harold Winters $5,000 from Jake's savings account without his knowledge. She created fake social media accounts to spy on Heather's friends and coworkers. She's been following Heather to her appointments, photographing her without consent, and attempting to gather information to use against her. Lucy gasped as pieces fell into place. Amanda, you asked me so many questions about Heather over the past few months. You wanted to know about her work schedule, her therapy appointments, even her relationship with her father before he died. I thought you were just being supportive. The most disturbing evidence, Robert continued, involves Amanda's behavior during Heather's father's funeral. He pulled out printed text messages, his voice becoming harder. While Heather was grieving the loss of her dad, Amanda sent me messages suggesting this was the perfect time for me to see Heather's true character, and that grief reveals people's weakness. I felt sick remembering those dark days after Dad's funeral. I had been struggling to function, leaning heavily on Robert for support, and Amanda had been trying to manipulate that vulnerability against me. She actually tried to seduce me at the funeral reception, Robert said quietly. While my wife was saying goodbye to her father, Amanda cornered me in the church parking lot and suggested I deserved someone who could handle life's challenges better. Amanda's face showed no remorse, only panic at being exposed. Robert, you're taking everything out of context. I was trying to help you see that Heather wasn't emotionally stable enough to be a good wife and mother. Look how she fell apart after her father died. Strong women don't need months of therapy to deal with loss. Jake stood up slowly, his hands shaking with rage. Amanda, you emptied our savings account. You used our children's college fund money to pay a criminal to stalk my brother's wife. You've been lying to me about everything for our entire marriage. Diane returned from checking on Sophia, her face tight with concern. Sophia is asking if Daddy really isn't her father. How could you do this to an innocent child, Amanda? But Amanda's desperation made her double down on her accusations. Because I know Heather is hiding something, she insisted. No one needs that much therapy. No one has that many private meetings with a man unless something inappropriate is happening. And look at Sophia. She doesn't look anything like Robert. Those green eyes came from somewhere. Robert's expression became deadly serious. Amanda, you've just given me the perfect opportunity to address your most serious accusation. He reached into his envelope one more time and pulled out an official-looking document. Since you've chosen to question my daughter's paternity in front of our entire family, let me put that question to rest permanently. The room fell completely silent as we all realized Robert had been prepared for this exact moment. He had known Amanda would eventually attack Sophia's legitimacy, and he had armed himself with the ultimate response. Sophia appeared at the top of the staircase, having heard her name mentioned. Her small voice carried clearly through the quiet house. Daddy? Are you really my daddy? Robert looked up at his daughter with infinite love and tenderness. Come here, sweetheart. Daddy has something very important to show everyone that proves how much you belong to our family. Sophia slowly descended the stairs, her green eyes still puffy from crying. She climbed into Robert's lap, seeking comfort from the chaos Amanda had created in our home. Robert wrapped one protective arm around our daughter, while holding the official document with his other hand. This is a certified DNA test from Genetic Laboratories of America. Robert announced, unfolding the paper for everyone to see. I had it performed 3 months ago, not because I doubted Heather or Sophia, but because I knew someone in this family was trying to plant seeds of doubt about our daughter's parentage. The document was official and comprehensive, with laboratory seals and signatures. Robert read the critical section aloud. Probability of paternity 99.97%. Robert James Morrison is confirmed to be the biological father of Sophia Grace Morrison. Amanda's face went completely white as her primary weapon against our family was destroyed by scientific evidence. She had built her entire campaign around the assumption that Sophia couldn't possibly be Robert's biological child because of her green eyes. But she doesn't look like you, Amanda whispered weakly. Those green eyes, that lighter hair color. How is that possible? Robert smiled gently at Sophia, brushing her hair away from her face. Sophia inherited her beautiful green eyes from her maternal great-grandfather, Heather's father's father. Basic genetics, Amanda. Children can inherit traits that skip generations. Any high school biology class would have taught you that. I felt emotional thinking about my dad and how proud he had been of Sophia's resemblance to his own father. Dad had always said Sophia had Morrison green eyes, a trait that had been passed down through his family line. Amanda's ignorance about genetics had led her to build an entire conspiracy theory around normal hereditary patterns. Robert wasn't finished with his revelations. He pulled out another thick envelope, this one with legal letterhead visible on the documents inside. Since Amanda has chosen to make false accusations, commit harassment, and endanger the welfare of a child, I've prepared criminal complaints and civil lawsuits. Frank leaned forward to examine the legal documents. What kind of charges are we talking about, son? Stalking, harassment, invasion of privacy, medical records, theft fraud, and making false reports to authorities, Robert listed methodically. Amanda called Child Protective Services twice, claiming Heather was an unfit mother due to mental instability. She provided them with illegally obtained therapy records and made false statements about drug use and neglect. My blood ran cold. Amanda had actually tried to have Sophia taken away from us by lying to government agencies. The depth of her malice was beyond anything I had imagined. CPS investigators quickly determined the reports were false and malicious, Robert continued. But making false reports about child abuse is a felony in this state. Amanda's attempt to weaponize child protection services against an innocent family is one of the most serious charges she'll face. Jake had been listening to the litany of his wife's crimes with growing horror. Amanda, you called CPS on Robert and Heather. You tried to have Sophia taken away from her parents. How could you sink that low? Amanda's response revealed just how twisted her thinking had become. I thought if Sophia was removed temporarily, Robert would see how unstable his home life had become. I thought he'd realize he needed someone stronger, someone who could provide a more stable environment. Diane gasped audibly. Amanda, you wanted to traumatize a 7-year-old child to serve your own selfish obsession. That's beyond sick. That's evil. The police report also documents Amanda's vandalism of Heather's property. Robert continued pulling out more evidence. Security cameras from our neighbors captured her keying Heather's car twice and slashing the tires during Sophia's birthday party last month. I remembered that incident clearly. I had thought it was random vandalism by teenagers, never suspecting that Amanda had destroyed my car while attending my daughter's birthday celebration. She's also been spreading false rumors about Heather at Sophia's school, Robert added. Several parents have come forward to report that Amanda approached them with concerns about Sophia's home life, suggesting Heather was mentally unstable and possibly neglecting her child. Lucy shook her head in disbelief. Amanda, you tried to turn other parents against Heather. You could have damaged her reputation permanently and hurt Sophia's social relationships at school. I was protecting that child, Amanda insisted, her voice becoming shrill with desperation. Sophia deserves better than an emotionally unstable mother who spends more time in therapy than taking care of her family. Robert's voice became ice cold. Dr. Martinez is prepared to testify that your attempts to access Heather's confidential therapy records constituted criminal invasion of medical privacy. He's also documented your harassment of his staff and your attempts to bribe employees for patient information. The evidence kept mounting as Robert revealed the full scope of his counter-investigation. Amanda had made so many enemies through her criminal behavior that witnesses were lining up to testify against her. Jake, I'm sorry you have to learn about this publicly, Robert said, turning to his brother with genuine sympathy. But Amanda forged your signature on bank documents to access funds for her stalking activities. She's committed financial fraud using your identity. Jake buried his face in his hands as he realized his wife had not only betrayed their marriage emotionally, but had also committed crimes using his name and credit. 6 years of marriage, and I never knew who you really were, he said to Amanda without looking up. Frank stood up slowly, his face showing the weight of his years and his disappointment. Amanda, you are no longer welcome in this family. You have shown yourself to be dangerous to children, destructive to marriages, and criminal in your behavior. I want you out of my house immediately. Diane nodded firmly in agreement. We will be changing our wills to ensure you have no access to any family inheritance or benefits. Your children will still be provided for through their father, but you have forfeited any claim to be considered part of this family. Amanda's last desperate attempt at manipulation involved turning to Robert directly. Robert, please, you have to understand. I love you. I've always loved you. I was willing to do anything to save you from a bad marriage. Doesn't that prove how much I care? Sophia, who had been quietly listening from Robert's lap, looked up at Amanda with the clarity that children sometimes possess. Aunt Amanda, why did you want to hurt my family? Healthy people don't hurt families. Are you sick? The innocence of Sophia's question hung in the air, as we all realized she had summed up Amanda's pathology more clearly than any adult analysis. Amanda was indeed sick, and her illness had nearly destroyed our family. Robert's response to Amanda's desperate plea was final and absolute. Amanda, what you call love is actually obsession and mental illness. Real love wants the other person to be happy, even if it's not with you. What you've done is the opposite of love. It's possession, control, and destruction. As if on cue, the doorbell rang. Through our front window, we could see police cars in our driveway, their red and blue lights casting eerie shadows on our dining room walls. As the police officers approached our front door, I felt a surge of strength I hadn't experienced since before my father's death. Watching Amanda's criminal behavior exposed had awakened something fierce and protective within me. I was no longer the grieving daughter trying to hold her family together while processing trauma. I was a mother defending her child and a wife protecting her marriage from a predator. Before the police take you away, Amanda, I said, standing up for the first time since this nightmare began, I have my own evidence to share with everyone. I walked to our kitchen and returned with a large binder I had been keeping hidden in our pantry for over 2 years. Robert looked surprised. He hadn't known about my own documentation project. I've been recording your harassment for much longer than you realize, I told Amanda, opening the binder to reveal hundreds of pages of evidence. Every cruel text message, every manipulative comment, every attempt to undermine my relationship with Robert and Sophia. The first section contained screenshots of text messages Amanda had sent me during my father's illness and immediately after his death. I read one aloud. Maybe your dad's accident happened because he was rushing to see a granddaughter who isn't even really part of our family. Some people aren't meant to have children, Heather. Diane gasped in horror. Amanda, you sent that to Heather right after her father died. How could you be so cruel during someone's darkest moment? Here are photos documenting how Amanda deliberately excluded Sophia from family pictures and events. I continued flipping to another section. Notice how she positions herself between Robert and Sophia in every group photo, or how she scheduled playdates for her children that specifically excluded our daughter. Lucy leaned over to examine the evidence, her face showing growing anger. Heather, I had no idea Amanda was being this systematically cruel to you and Sophia. You should have told me what was happening. I was documenting everything because I knew someday I'd need proof, I explained. Amanda was careful to be subtle around other adults, but I started noticing patterns in her behavior that were clearly designed to isolate and hurt our family. I showed everyone a series of videos I had secretly recorded on my phone. These are recordings of Amanda talking to Sophia when she thought no adults were listening. Watch what she says to a 6-year-old child. The first video showed Amanda at last year's Christmas gathering, kneeling down to Sophia's eye level while other adults were busy in the kitchen. Amanda's voice was crystal clear. "Sophia, you know Mommy doesn't really love Daddy the way she should, right? That's why she's always going to those secret meetings instead of taking care of your family." Frank's face showed absolute disgust. "Amanda, you were poisoning a child's mind against her own mother. That's psychological abuse." The next video was even more damaging. Amanda was telling 5-year-old Sophia, "Your mommy spends more time talking to other men than taking care of you. Don't you think Daddy deserves better? Don't you think you deserve a mommy who actually wants to be home with her family?" Sophia, who was listening to these recordings from Robert's lap, looked confused and hurt. "Aunt Amanda, why were you saying mean things about Mommy? Mommy takes really good care of me." I had more evidence that went beyond psychological manipulation. "Here's documentation of Amanda sabotaging my professional life," I said, pulling out email exchanges. "She called my supervisor at work 3 times, claiming to be a concerned family member, reporting that I was having emotional problems and might be unreliable due to substance abuse issues." Robert's jaw tightened as he realized how extensively Amanda had tried to destroy every aspect of my life. "Heather, why didn't you tell me she was attacking your career?" "Because I was documenting everything to build a comprehensive legal case," I replied. I knew if I complained about individual incidents, it would look like petty family drama. But taken together, this represents a sustained campaign of harassment and defamation. Jake examined some of the workplace emails, his face showing complete shame. Amanda used our home computer to send these. She was destroying Heather's professional reputation using our internet connection, probably while I was playing with our kids in the next room. Lucy discovered another section of my evidence binder. "What's this about Amanda creating fake social media accounts to spy on you?" I showed everyone printouts of multiple fake Facebook and Instagram profiles Amanda had created, each designed to look like a different person so she could friend my coworkers and family members. She was gathering information about my daily activities, my emotional state, and my relationships to use against me later. The fake profiles had names like Jennifer Davis and Michelle Thompson, complete with stolen photos and fabricated personal histories. Amanda had used these accounts to join online groups for grief support and single mothers trying to gather ammunition for her claim that I was emotionally unstable. Look at these Google search histories from Amanda's computer. I continued showing printed screenshots. She was researching how to file false CPS reports, how to plant evidence of drug use, and how to fabricate evidence of adultery for divorce proceedings. Frank's military background showed in his controlled anger. "Amanda, you researched methods to destroy an innocent family like you were planning a military campaign. This is beyond malicious. This is sociopathic behavior." The most damaging evidence in my binder involved Amanda's attempts to manipulate Sophia's relationship with me. Here are recordings of Amanda telling Sophia that I didn't want to be her mother, that I was planning to abandon the family, and that Daddy would be happier with someone else. I played one particularly cruel recording where Amanda told 4-year-old Sophia, "Your mommy only pretends to love you when other people are watching. When you're older, you'll understand that some mommies aren't really good mommies." Sophia started crying as she heard these words, finally understanding why she had sometimes felt confused about Amanda's behavior toward our family. Robert held her tightly, whispering reassurance that Amanda's words had been lies meant to hurt us. "I have witness statements from our neighbors." I added, pulling out signed affidavits. Mrs. Chen from next door documented times she saw Amanda parked outside our house with binoculars, watching our home for hours. Mr. Rodriguez across the street photographed Amanda going through our mailbox and garbage when we weren't home. The evidence kept mounting as I revealed the full scope of Amanda's surveillance and harassment campaign. She had been stalking our family with the dedication of someone completely disconnected from reality. Here's proof that Amanda tried to access my medical records from other doctors, too, I said, showing official letters. She contacted my gynecologist, my dentist, and even Sophia's pediatrician, claiming to be my sister, and requesting confidential information about our family's health. Jake looked physically sick as he realized his wife had been committing multiple felonies while he was at work supporting their family. Amanda, you could go to prison for some of this. You've committed serious crimes against Robert and Heather while using my name and our family resources. The police officers had been patiently waiting while we presented our evidence, but now they stepped forward to address Amanda directly. The lead officer introduced himself as Detective Williams and explained that they had warrants for Amanda's arrest on multiple charges. Amanda made one last desperate attempt to justify her behavior. Everything I did was to protect Robert and Sophia from a woman who was obviously hiding dangerous secrets. I was being a good sister-in-law and aunt. Detective Williams had clearly reviewed our evidence in advance. Ma'am, you're being charged with stalking, harassment, invasion of privacy fraud, and making false reports to government agencies. You have the right to remain silent. As they began reading Amanda her Miranda rights, she turned to Robert with tears streaming down her face. Robert, please don't let them do this to me. I love you. I've always loved you. Everything I did was because I love you. Robert's response was calm and final. Amanda, what you call love is actually mental illness that has hurt innocent people, including a child. Real love doesn't destroy families. What you need is professional help, not my family in your life. As Detective Williams continued reading Amanda her rights, she became increasingly hysterical, realizing that her years of planning and manipulation had completely backfired. But Robert wasn't finished with his revelations. He pulled out one final envelope, this one marked with the letterhead of a major private security firm. There's one more thing everyone needs to know, Robert announced, his voice carrying the gravity of someone delivering the final blow. Amanda's private investigator, Harold Winters, has been cooperating with law enforcement for the past 6 weeks. He approached me directly because he was concerned about the illegal nature of what Amanda was asking him to do. Amanda's face went from white to gray as she realized her trusted ally had betrayed her. That's impossible. Harold was working for me. I paid him thousands of dollars. Harold contacted me when you asked him to plant false evidence and fabricate proof of Heather's infidelity, Robert continued. He recorded every conversation you had with him, documenting your criminal intentions. Detective Williams nodded, confirming Robert's statement. Mr. Winters came to us 6 weeks ago with evidence that Mrs. Amanda Morrison was attempting to hire him for illegal activities. He's been working with our department ever since gathering evidence for your prosecution. Robert played another recording, this one, capturing Amanda's voice clearly as she spoke to Harold Winters. I don't care what it costs or how you do it. I need photographs of Heather in compromising positions with another man. If you can't catch her cheating, then we'll have to stage something that looks convincing. I'll pay you an extra $5,000 for fake evidence that will hold up in court. Jake's face showed complete devastation as he heard his wife openly discussing plans to fabricate evidence against his brother's family. Amanda, you were willing to commit perjury and frame Heather for crimes she didn't commit. You could have destroyed her life completely. Harold also recorded this conversation. Robert continued playing another audio file, Amanda's voice filled the room again. "I've been researching how to plant drugs in someone's car to get them arrested. If we can get Heather charged with drug possession, Robert will see what kind of person he really married. Can you help me obtain illegal substances to plant in her vehicle?" Diane covered her mouth in shock. Amanda wanted to frame Heather for drug crimes. She could have sent an innocent mother to prison and destroyed Sophia's family forever. The recordings revealed the true depth of Amanda's criminal planning. She had researched methods to destroy my life that went far beyond simple harassment or manipulation. She was willing to commit serious felonies that could have resulted in my imprisonment and Sophia's removal from our home. Here's Amanda's Google search history from her personal computer. Robert continued showing printed screenshots to the police. She researched how to file false CPS reports, how to fake DNA test results, and how to make anonymous tips to police about supposed drug activity. Detective Williams examined the search history with professional interest. "Mrs. Morrison, these searches show premeditation for multiple felonies. You researched methods to frame an innocent person for serious crimes." Amanda's desperation reached new levels as she realized how thoroughly her plans had been exposed. "Harold was supposed to be helping me save Robert from a bad marriage. I trusted him to do what was necessary to expose Heather's lies. Harold recorded this conversation from 3 weeks ago," Robert said, playing another audio file. Amanda's voice was clearly audible. "If we can't find real evidence of cheating, then I want you to contact someone who can create fake DNA test results, showing Robert isn't Sophia's father. I'll pay whatever it costs to prove that child doesn't belong in our family." Frank stood up abruptly, his military bearing evident in his rigid posture. "Amanda, you wanted to falsify paternity tests to tear a father away from his child. You're talking about destroying a little girl's identity and family bonds based on complete lies." "There's more," Robert continued grimly. "Amanda researched how to make anonymous calls to Child Protective Services that would be taken seriously. She specifically looked up what allegations would result in immediate removal of a child from the home. I felt physically sick as I realized Amanda had been planning to have Sophia traumatically separated from her parents based on fabricated evidence. The psychological damage to a 7-year-old would have been devastating and potentially permanent. Harold also documented Amanda's attempts to bribe employees at various businesses and medical offices. Robert added, "She offered money to people at Heather's gym, Sophia's school, our bank, and even our veterinary clinic, trying to gather personal information about our family." Lucy shook her head in disbelief. "Amanda, you turned stalking Heather into a full-time job. How did you have time for anything else? How did Jake and your children not notice you were completely obsessed with destroying another family?" Jake answered quietly, his voice filled with shame. "She told me she was volunteering for various charities and community organizations. I thought she was being socially active and making friends. I had no idea she was spending 40 to 50 hours a week stalking Robert and Heather." Detective Williams addressed Amanda directly. "Ma'am, the evidence shows you spent approximately 6 months planning and executing a comprehensive campaign to destroy the Morrison family through false accusations, fabricated evidence, and criminal harassment. This goes far beyond simple stalking. You've committed conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted extortion, and solicitation of criminal activity." Amanda made one final desperate plea to the family. "You don't understand. I was trying to protect everyone from Heather's lies. I knew she was hiding something dangerous. I was being a good sister-in-law and aunt." Sophia, who had been quietly listening from Robert's lap, looked up at Amanda with the piercing honesty that only children possess. "Aunt Amanda, you tried to take me away from Mommy and Daddy. You wanted to hurt my family. Why did you want to make me sad?" The innocent question from a 7-year-old seemed to break through Amanda's delusions for just a moment. She looked at Sophia with something that might have been regret, but then her mental illness reasserted itself. "Sophia, someday when you're older, you'll understand that I was trying to save you from an unstable situation," Amanda said, still clinging to her twisted justifications. Robert's voice carried absolute finality when he responded, "Amanda, you will never speak to my daughter again. You will have no contact with any member of this family. You are a danger to children, and you have forfeited any right to be part of our lives." Detective Williams stepped forward with handcuffs as his partner read the formal charges. "Amanda Morrison, you are under arrest for stalking, harassment, conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted extortion, solicitation of criminal activity, and making false reports to government agencies." As they placed Amanda in handcuffs, she made one last desperate appeal to Robert. "Robert, please, I love you. I've always loved you. Don't let them take me away from you. Choose me instead of her. I'll make you happier than Heather ever could." Robert's response was calm but devastating. "Amanda, what you call love is mental illness that has terrorized my family. You need psychiatric help, not a relationship. You've shown yourself to be dangerous to everyone around you, especially children." As the police led Amanda away, Jake turned to Robert with tears in his eyes. "I'm filing for divorce immediately, and I'm requesting emergency custody of our children. I can't let them be raised by someone capable of this level of cruelty and criminal behavior." 6 months later, I stood in a courthouse watching Amanda receive her sentence. The judge had reviewed hundreds of pages of evidence, listened to testimony from multiple witnesses, and consulted with psychiatric experts about Amanda's mental state. Her diagnosis of obsessive-compulsive personality disorder with narcissistic features explained her behavior, but didn't excuse the crimes she had committed against our family. "Mrs. Morrison," the judge addressed Amanda, "you have pleaded guilty to charges of stalking, harassment, conspiracy to commit fraud, and making false reports to government agencies. The evidence shows a sustained campaign of psychological terrorism against an innocent family, including attempts to traumatize a young child through false accusations and fabricated evidence." Amanda had spent 3 months in jail awaiting trial, during which time she received psychiatric evaluation and treatment. The medications had helped stabilize her mental state enough for her to understand the severity of her actions, though she still struggled to accept full responsibility. "I sentence you to 2 years of supervised probation, mandatory psychiatric treatment, and a permanent restraining order prohibiting any contact with the Morrison family," the judge continued. "You will also pay $30,000 in restitution for damages, including legal fees, therapy costs, and compensation for the harassment suffered by the victims." Jake had filed for divorce within days of Amanda's arrest, and the proceedings had been swift once Amanda's criminal behavior became public record. He was awarded full custody of their 2 children, with Amanda allowed only supervised visitation after completing a year of intensive therapy. Additionally, the judge added, "Any violation of the restraining order or any similar behavior toward other families will result in immediate imprisonment for the full 5-year maximum sentence allowed by law." Amanda's private investigator, Harold Winters, had received a lighter sentence in exchange for his cooperation with law enforcement. His testimony had been crucial in documenting the extent of Amanda's criminal planning and her intent to commit even more serious crimes. After the sentencing, Robert and I walked out of the courthouse holding hands with Sophia, skipping between us. The legal proceedings were finally over, but our family's healing journey had been ongoing for months. "Mommy, is the mean lady going to try to hurt us anymore?" Sophia asked as we reached our car. "No, sweetheart," I replied, kneeling down to her eye level. "The judge made sure she can't come near our family ever again. We're safe now, and we're stronger than before because we protected each other. The experience had transformed our family in unexpected ways. Robert had taken a leave of absence from work during the worst of the legal proceedings, and we had spent concentrated time rebuilding trust and communication. Sophia had received play therapy to help her process the adult conflict she had witnessed, and she emerged from the experience with remarkable resilience and maturity. My relationship with Dr. Martinez had evolved as well. After Amanda's attempts to violate patient confidentiality were exposed, Dr. Martinez had become an advocate for stronger privacy protections in mental health care. He testified before the state legislature about the need for enhanced penalties for people who weaponize therapy records against vulnerable patients. Heather's case demonstrates how predators can exploit the therapeutic process to harm people who are seeking legitimate help for grief and trauma, Dr. Martinez had testified. We must strengthen legal protections for patients so they feel safe accessing mental health care without fear that their private struggles will be used against them. The publicity from Amanda's case had led to my involvement in victims' rights advocacy. Other families reached out to share their own experiences with obsessive relatives and in-laws who had engaged in similar harassment campaigns. I discovered that Amanda's behavior, while extreme, was part of a larger pattern of family-based stalking that often goes unreported because victims assume it's just family drama. Many people don't realize that family members can be perpetrators of serious crimes, like stalking and harassment. I explained during my first public speaking engagement at a domestic violence prevention conference. We're taught to tolerate inappropriate behavior from relatives, but when that behavior becomes criminal, we have to prioritize protecting ourselves and our children over maintaining family relationships. My advocacy work led to consulting with law enforcement agencies about recognizing signs of family-based harassment and stalking. Police departments often struggle with cases involving relatives because they assume family disputes are civil matters rather than criminal behavior. The key indicators we teach law enforcement to recognize include systematic documentation of someone's activities, attempts to access private records, spreading false information to employers or schools, and using children as weapons against their parents. I explained during a training session for police officers. Robert had also found new purpose through our experience. He joined a support group for spouses of stalking victims, helping other husbands understand how to support their wives through recovery from harassment and trauma. Many men don't realize how deeply stalking and harassment affect their wives' sense of safety and trust, Robert shared during one group meeting. My job was to provide consistent reassurance, help document evidence, and never dismiss Heather's concerns as overreaction or paranoia. Our extended family relationships had also evolved significantly. Frank and Diane had become even more protective and supportive of our immediate family, recognizing that they had unknowingly enabled Amanda's access to us for years. We should have recognized the warning signs earlier, Frank admitted during one of our weekly family dinners. Amanda's excessive interest in Robert's personal life, her competitive attitude toward Heather, and her inappropriate comments about your marriage should have raised red flags. Jake had also become a closer part of our family unit as he navigated single parenthood and helped his children understand why their mother couldn't be part of their lives. His kids, who were 8 and 10 years old, had been devastated to learn about Amanda's behavior, but grateful that their father had protected them from ongoing exposure to her mental illness. Uncle Jake's children are doing so well, Sophia observed one evening after a family barbecue. They seem happier now that they don't have to worry about their mommy being angry all the time. The financial impact of Amanda's crimes had been significant, but manageable. Beyond the $30,000 in court-ordered restitution, our insurance had covered most of the security system installation, therapy costs, and legal fees. Amanda's attempts to damage my professional reputation had actually backfired when my employer learned about her harassment campaign and offered me additional support and protection. The strength and grace you've shown throughout this ordeal reflect exactly the kind of character we want in our management team, my supervisor had told me. We're promoting you to regional director, partly because of how you've handled this difficult situation. Lucy had also played a crucial role in our family's recovery. Her friendship had provided emotional support during the darkest moments, and her witness testimony had been important in documenting Amanda's manipulation tactics. I learned to trust my instincts about people, Lucy reflected over coffee one morning. When Amanda was asking all those questions about you, something felt off, but I dismissed my concerns as paranoia. Now I know that intuition about predatory behavior is usually accurate. Dr. Martinez had continued working with our family on an as-needed basis, helping Sophia understand complex concepts like mental illness, criminal behavior, and family boundaries. His expertise had been invaluable in helping our 7-year-old process events that would challenge most adults. Sophia has remarkable emotional intelligence for her age, Dr. Martinez observed during one of our sessions. She understands that Amanda was sick in her mind, and she's learned to distinguish between healthy family relationships and toxic behavior. One of the most important lessons we learned was about the difference between privacy and secrecy in family relationships. Amanda had exploited our natural desire to handle family conflicts privately, using our discretion against us. There's a difference between keeping family business private and keeping secrets that enable criminal behavior. I explained to other families facing similar situations. When a family member's behavior becomes dangerous or illegal, you have an obligation to seek outside help and protection. Our experience had also taught us about the importance of documenting suspicious behavior before it escalates to obvious criminality. My 2 years of evidence gathering had been crucial in building a strong legal case against Amanda. Many victims of family harassment don't document the early warning signs because they hope the situation will improve, I shared during victim advocacy training sessions. But systematic documentation can be the difference between obtaining legal protection and being dismissed as engaging in family drama. The restraining order had provided peace of mind, but the real protection came from our family's increased awareness and stronger communication. Sophia now understood concepts like appropriate boundaries, truthful versus manipulative communication, and the importance of telling trusted adults when someone makes her feel uncomfortable. If someone tries to make you keep secrets from mommy and daddy, or if they say mean things about our family, you tell us right away, Robert had explained to Sophia. Healthy adults don't put children in the middle of grown-up problems. Our marriage had emerged stronger from the crisis, partly because we had learned to rely on each other completely when facing external threats. Robert's calm leadership during Amanda's accusations had shown me the depth of his commitment to our family. I never doubted you or Sophia for even a moment, Robert had told me during one of our recovery conversations. Amanda's accusations revealed more about her mental illness than they ever could have about your character. My grief counseling had continued beyond the original timeline, but now it focused on processing the trauma of Amanda's harassment rather than just my father's death. Dr. Martinez had helped me understand how Amanda had exploited my vulnerable emotional state during bereavement. Predators often target people who are dealing with loss or major life changes, Dr. Martinez explained. Amanda saw your grief as an opportunity to destabilize your marriage and insert herself into Robert's life as a source of support. The community response to our situation had been overwhelmingly supportive, once the truth about Amanda's behavior became public. Other families came forward to share their own experiences with her inappropriate boundary crossing and manipulative behavior that they had previously dismissed as personality quirks. Amanda asked invasive questions about our marriage and financial situation, one neighbor admitted. She also made comments about how she could help my husband if I was ever unavailable. At the time, I thought she was just being overly friendly, but now I realize she was testing boundaries with multiple families. Sophia's school had also implemented new protocols for protecting children from adults who might try to gather information inappropriately. Amanda's attempts to question teachers and other parents about our family had raised awareness about how predators can exploit school communities. We now train all staff to recognize when someone is asking inappropriate questions about specific families, Sophia's principal explained. We also educate parents about protecting their children's privacy from adults who might seem helpful but have ulterior motives. The long-term impact on Sophia had been surprisingly positive. Rather than being traumatized by the adult conflict she witnessed, she had developed strong critical thinking skills and healthy skepticism about people who try to manipulate children. Sophia is now very good at recognizing when adults are trying to make her feel uncomfortable or confused about her family relationships, Dr. Martinez observed. She's learned that healthy adults respect children's relationships with their parents rather than trying to interfere. Looking back on the entire experience 18 months later, I realized that Amanda's attempt to destroy our family had actually strengthened us in ways we never could have anticipated. We had learned to trust our instincts, document suspicious behavior, seek help when needed, and prioritize our immediate family's safety over extended family relationships. The most profound lesson from our ordeal was about the nature of real love versus obsessive possession. Amanda had confused her desire to control and possess Robert with genuine love, leading her to behavior that was the opposite of loving. True love wants the other person to be happy and healthy, even if that happiness doesn't include you. I explained to other families dealing with obsessive relatives. When someone claims to love you but works to destroy your existing relationships and happiness that's not love, that's mental illness expressing itself through possession and control. Our story had also highlighted the importance of supporting family members who are dealing with grief or trauma rather than exploiting their vulnerability. Robert's consistent support during my father's death and subsequent grief had been the foundation that allowed us to survive Amanda's attacks. When someone you love is struggling with loss or trauma, your job is to provide stability and support, Robert shared during his support group meetings. Predators see vulnerability as an opportunity, but loving partners see it as a time to step up and provide extra protection. The legal precedent set by Amanda's case had also helped other families obtain protection from obsessive relatives. Several similar cases had been successfully prosecuted using the documentation strategies we had developed. Amanda's case demonstrated that family members can be held criminally accountable for stalking and harassment, even when they claim to be acting out of love or concern, our attorney explained. This has empowered other victims to seek legal protection rather than tolerating abuse because the perpetrator is a relative. 1 year after Amanda's sentencing, our family celebrated Sophia's 9th birthday, with the knowledge that we had survived the worst kind of betrayal and emerged stronger. The party included only people who genuinely loved and supported our family, and Sophia's joy was uncontaminated by fear or confusion about adult relationships. I'm grateful that the mean lady taught us how strong our family really is, Sophia said during her birthday speech. Now I know that real families protect each other and fake families try to hurt each other. As I watched our daughter blow out her birthday candles, surrounded by people who celebrated her happiness rather than trying to destroy it, I reflected on how much we had learned about the difference between chosen family and biological family. Sometimes the people who share your DNA are the ones who pose the greatest threat to your peace and safety. The experience had taught me that protecting your children and marriage sometimes requires making difficult decisions about family relationships. When someone's behavior becomes dangerous or criminal, their biological connection to your family becomes irrelevant compared to your obligation to keep your household safe. The greatest revenge against someone who tries to steal your happiness is to live that happiness fully surrounded by people who celebrate your success instead of sabotaging it. I realized this became my guiding principle for building our new life free from Amanda's toxicity. Our family's story serves as a reminder that justice doesn't always happen quickly or easily, but persistence in documenting truth and seeking appropriate help can eventually prevail against even the most determined predators. Amanda's 2 years of planning and manipulation were ultimately defeated by our commitment to protecting each other and refusing to be intimidated into silence. Today, Robert, Sophia, and I live peacefully in the same house where Amanda once tried to destroy us. The dining room where she made her devastating accusations has been redecorated, and we host monthly dinners for the family members and friends who truly support our happiness. Our home is filled with laughter, honest communication, and the security that comes from knowing we can overcome any threat as long as we face it together. Have you ever dealt with a family member who crossed the line from inappropriate behavior into criminal harassment? How did you find the courage to prioritize your immediate family's safety over maintaining extended family relationships? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family betrayal and finding justice. Share this with anyone who might need encouragement to document suspicious behavior and seek help when family relationships become dangerous. Thank you for listening to our journey, and I hope our experience helps you recognize that you deserve to live in peace, surrounded by people who genuinely love and support your family's happiness.